Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We're back with another DADCAW. It is currently the 22nd of March 2021, which means it's only been 4 days, or 3 plus 3 divided by 3 days, since the previous DADCAW. It is, of course, 3:26 in the afternoon, as a matter of fact. So we're getting up to it very early this week, making sure that we're on schedule, being productive. You see that calendar in the background that I forgot to take down for this video? That's okay, because it's a nice segue into Antikythera, the engine that has been announced in the last couple of days. I think today is its 3rd day anniversary, so you can write that one down as a 3. Maybe it's already the 4th, I don't fully remember. Bottom line is, we got people interested in contributing. Obviously, we got myself learning this newfangled language, Go, and there's a number of people who initially had some misgivings about it being in Go instead of something more conventional like C++ or C. And while those two languages were our original start point, you could say, they weren't ending up to be the ending point. They didn't end up being the ultimate selection. And at some point, I'll probably give you some feedback on how I feel Go has gone. But for now, I'm still very new to the language, and I'm just placing my faith into Vic, who has vetted a bunch of different languages, just like he's vetted a bunch of different libraries and tools, and I'm allowing him to call the shots on that one. I'm convinced by his arguments, even if I haven't yet seen everything bear out just yet, because we don't have a complete engine to look at, or even a functioning product just yet. However, I will be monitoring our progress very closely, of course, and learning the language so that I can contribute to our progress. And I figured it's a pretty good idea to talk about the roadmap going into Antikythera's development, and essentially what I want to get out, maybe just in this month, we'll say. We'll keep our scope relatively small, because obviously I'd be here all day with a 30-hour DADCAW talking about, like, here's everything that I want this engine to be possible to do in the engine. Here's everything I want to actually have as far as features go. We're just going to keep ourselves contained to the idea of working within what we can realistically accomplish before the end of March, which is obviously only 8 days. And then maybe we'll say like a couple of days into April as well. So in the next little while, the goal obviously initially, when we just started the engine, was to try to get some simple GPU integration using Raylib to interact with OpenGL, and to start expressing that and seeing where we can go with that, to start laying the foundations with the net code and the tick rate stuff, and figuring out what we want to do as far as like technical targets, and being able to design a flexible engine in that respect. And ultimately, getting to the point where we have a somewhat stable foundation, where we have functioning networking and functioning GPU integration. Those are like the initial stops, and then we can start to worry about things like pathfinding and actual data structure implementation, which we already started working on the very first day of its development, as a matter of fact. And then we can start to worry about actually adding in things from example Hydra or other RTS games or whatever, and then we can blow open the doors at that point by starting to actually develop products that people can playtest. So that's very exciting in terms of a roadmap, but it will require quite a bit of work, and I'm simplifying and skipping over a lot of things there. However, we've already got the GPU integration stuff taken care of with Raylib, so that's already done. Insofar as we are using Raylib, we've got a bare bones main menu figured out. We've figured out UI types to go along with that, and we're continuing to explore where we're going to go from there. It looks like the next stop will be the networking, as I mentioned earlier, and then we'll just try to make like a blank map and get some basic stuff going on where, without pathfinding, without any computation, just seeing if we can order a unit to move from point A to point B, and maybe we'll dress it up there by adding like animation code and figuring out how to make the Marine actually move, or the Scourge fly and accelerate and decelerate and all that. And then we can start to worry about pathfinding and order logic and all of this other stuff. And at that point, that'll probably be where like Iquare, who's studied pathfinding algorithms quite a bit, will probably be able to have more to contribute than Vic or myself, who haven't. Chalk's obviously chipped in by giving us his lockstep networking, so we could use that as an example, or maybe a foundation and then add on to it, or at least see like, here's an example of it working, so let's see what we want to implement on our side. It's very exciting, very kind of him to contribute that to the project, very appreciative of that. And yeah, it looks like we're speeding right along, to be honest. I thought the GPU stuff was going to take us a while. It took us like maybe 2-3 hours, like 3 hours max, and that's an unironic 3 right there, so you know it's special. So yeah, it looks like before the end of this month, we might even have some bare bones networking stuff. We might even have like bare bones orders and whatnot. So the more of these elements we can start to fill in, the more this foundation can be developed, the higher my sort of expectations will rise in terms of like how high we can get, how developed we can get within just like a month's time. So if I were to extrapolate the current progress we're seeing to times when maybe we've got less other stuff going on, like later this week, I've got some casting coming up. Veek's obviously got his classes in the current semester that he's finishing up with. Icore has been busy with a couple of different things to my knowledge. So especially considering this isn't even when we'll all have like the most time to dispense spending on this engine itself. Assuming even if we just keep to the schedule we're currently looking at, we might even have something like a demo of some units running around and pathfinding, and I guess terrain and stuff will be a bit of a challenge to grapple with. But we might even have something, resembling a functional demo in a month's time, which is absolute blazing fast record. Never thought we would get there. I still am not 100% sure if that's realistic, but it feels like it's within reach. And at the very least, we'll have something to show by the end of April, probably something to show even by the end of March in terms of where we need to go from there. And I guess you'll just have to tune into the occasional Antikythera dev streams to find out how far we've been going. I haven't announced the name of the actual game or even any information about the game that we will be developing within this engine, but it's probably not the only game that we will be developing within this engine. As a bit of a teaser, I will say that I've obviously for a long time given a lot of thought into how to develop a compelling MOBA without falling into the ridiculous traps that League of Legends and other games of the same genre have fallen into, where there's just an infinite amount of like microtransactions and stuff that really confuses readability, and the fact that cosmetic stuff is even locked behind a paywall, or functional things like runes in the past for League, or currently champions, like you don't just have all of the champions. As far as I know, they haven't done that anyway. Like that's pretty stupid. So we wouldn't have any of that shit. We wouldn't have like account leveling or whatever. Like that doesn't even make sense. Maybe to show like how many points you've accrued or whatever, that might be fine, like on a specific champion, like a win-loss record, similar to how you would show like win rate on a race, like Zerg win rate or whatever in StarCraft. You might have something like that for champions, but there's no point in like having any of that bullshit in there. So I might be looking into deploying something like that at some point, because this is an engine for like 2D RTS style games. And obviously MOBAs are downstream from RTS, just like you could say tower defenses are downstream from RTS and all of this other stuff. I guess another caveat there would be people might want to deploy like an RPG style thing, which obviously has been tried since time immemorial, realistically speaking, time and time again, over at like Stardate.net, where they'll try to butcher a bunch of terrain blends to look really bad and then have like jank music and jank everything. Well, you'll actually have the tools to do something like that if that's what you want. I think Luciferius was one such person who was interested in maybe using some of the Hydra stuff as a framework for an RPG map or something. And you know what? I'm not 100% sure if that's even still true or if that's even still the guy, but if anybody is interested in that sort of thing, the engine will be usable in that sense. If you wanted to make a Diablo 2 clone or something, that would be possible, obviously. Chalks' wild experiments with the fucking Ghost crew obviously lost to anything because now StarCraft 2 updated at least one time, which means everything broke. Well, he can do whatever the fuck he wants in his micro lunatic world using this engine as well. So I hope that not just myself and the people who are contributing to my personal projects, but also anybody else who doesn't necessarily have anything to contribute to the engine's development, but still wants to make some sort of content in one of these genres I've rattled off, will be able to make use of Antikythera and maybe have some input on its development in terms of keeping things flexible for whatever they might want to do. It's just another thing we might be able to consider. So these are all the things that are on my mind since we've announced and started the development of Antikythera. And of course, at some point I will be putting together a design document page or series of pages on the upcoming RTS title that we will be building in Antikythera. Apparently, I'll have to do that sooner rather than later, because at some point we're going to be closing out the engine development, probably not within this year, but at some point we're going to have you getting to the point where we might even be able to start working on a tech demo of some sort anyway. So we'll see how soon that gets thrown around. But until then, you can rest assured that we are hard men in the rear, making sure that this thing gets developed. So until whenever you decide to grace us with your presence in one of these streams, in our Discord server where we talk about this stuff all the time, that's all I will have for you today. Give it a like if you like the idea of the engine. And that's it for me. Bye.